Good morning and welcome back to another episode of what I am now starting to officially call the Manny Wolfe Show. I'm done with this quarantine crap. You hear me? I'm over it. Today's guest is Jen. Is it Cochrane or Cochrane?
Cochrane, yes.
Cochrane. And she is going to finally scratch that itch for you guys out there who just can't seem to niche. You're going to scratch the itch for those who can't niche. That wasn't intended, but it worked out pretty nicely.
That's my new slogan right there.
There you go. There you go. That's free for you. I'm only looking down because I have to do a bit of sharing real quick. So you, Jen, and you, audience, please forgive me. I'll be right with you all. Okay, here we go. We're up. Let's do the watch party. Woo woo. Let's write a post, which I believe shares it automatically to my profile. And let's share it to a group too. Let's get it all over.
Share the love.
Share the love. Exactly. Let's share the love. Okay. The love has been shared. Jen Cochrane, how are you this morning?
I am doing really great. And yourself?
Good.
Good.
I will say on global collapse news that I'm in California, and California, Washington, and Oregon just formed a coalition to decide when and how they can start opening back the cities up or the states up. And I am relieved. I am so glad to hear that. I am.
Yeah, I'm up in Oregon, so we're in the
fantastic.
same boat there.
Yeah, I have been sitting here just going, watching Facebook and going, this is not a binary problem. This is a problem that is multifaceted and sophisticated. I'm not seeing a lot of critical thinking here. I'm seeing a lot of name calling, and it's just the typical devolution of how people sort of tribalize. And anyway, so I'm really glad that the discussion has changed to we can't just let our economy tank. Also, we don't want to kill people. But so I digress. Excuse me, I digress. We're not here to talk about that.
But yay for us, we're friends.
That's right. So who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, so I call myself the multifaceted entrepreneur.
Okay.
Usually I can say it better than that, but I obviously haven't had enough tea yet this morning. So what I do is I help people who have like 1,000,001 ideas, who've tried to niche before, but they just feel like they're like have to sell the rest of their soul in order to pick a niche.
Yeah.
And once they've niched down, then it's like they really have that grass is greener on the other side syndrome come in strong. I help the people who are like addicted to shiny object syndrome to not like get rid of that, because I don't think that people like me can, but I help them learn how to control that and to use it to kind of guide their business and to make their business really fun and enjoyable and inspiring to them. So therefore they can take that and do great things in the world for other people.
Interesting. So where's the line between squirrel on methamphetamines? You know where I'm going with this, right?
Yes.
And multi-passionate entrepreneur, because the squirrel on methamphetamines, to just explode out the ludicrous analogy I just made there, is never going to make much more than $1, right? They're going to rush here, do something, make $1. That doesn't work. Even if you are multi-passionate, you've got to have the money coming in.
Yes.
So what's your sort of like your first thing that you help these people understand or do or execute? Is it an understanding? Is it an execution? Like, where the heck do we begin? Because I know there's a number of us that need to hear this stuff.
Well, I love your squirrel analogy because it's exactly the analogy that I use. So my system is called the squirrel on a leash system.
There you go.
You're allowed to have a squirrel, and your squirrel's allowed to chase after all the fun little nuts in the world, but you need to leash it to something. And so you asked, what do you route that to so that you can move in a direction? And to me, ultimately, you leash that squirrel to your big vision for the world. So a lot of people, even though they have like sometimes a divergent set of interests, I consider those to all be tools. that they use in
Yeah.
order to build something. But usually, if you look at it from a bird's eye enough view, those tools and the things that they've learned and the things that they're passionate about and the things that they're interested in learning more about are generally aligned with some direction, but you're just so in the midst of it that you can't really see what that direction is. So
let's stop there for a second.
Yeah.
I want to zoom in on that. I think that's really important. So you just said basically that you can often discover with a 1,000-foot view. And I think I want to ask you, how do we get that 1,000-foot view? But you can often discover that, oh, these are actually, it's kind of like if you're down in the maze and you're just running around bumping into stuff, you don't get that it's all part of one maze, right? So, yeah, I think what I want to know is, for that multi-passionate squirrel who needs a leash, how do we even, like, what's the first step to getting the 1,000-foot view? How do we do that? I bet that's a big piece for people, is they never stop being in urgency mode, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're so good. I mean, now it seems like we're even better than we were 10, 15 years ago about being able to stay busy doing stuff that keeps us distracted.
Right.
So kind of with your maze analogy, a big difference between somebody that niches and somebody that's multifaceted and does not niche so much is that they're both in the maze, right?
Right.
But a niche person is just like, okay, well, this is the corner of the maze that I'm staying in, and people that pass by this corner of the maze are the people I talk to, as opposed to let's go explore the maze, leave like a rabbit trail for the people behind us to follow, which is kind of more what I encourage my multifaceted people to do. Is it's a lot easier to just help the people that are one step behind you than it is to kind of reach out in other ways for somebody that's multifaceted, because your trail is going to go all over the place. But in answer to your 10,000-foot view question, the first step to my process with people is I have them make 4 lists. So your skills, your talents, your passions, and your interests. So your skills is the stuff that you're really, really good at, regardless of whether or not you like them. Talents are more things that like the people come to you for. So it's not just your inventory of everything you can do, but it's like that next step up. Your passions are the things that you love to do, whether or not people pay you for that. And then of course your interests are the direction you're moving. So it's the things that are catching your eye right now.
This is sort of like that Venn diagram that from Asia, right? That Asian Venn diagram for harmony or something. Life satisfaction, meaning, whatever it was. Yeah, this is good. Okay, so now we've got the 4 lists. And what's next?
And so the list that has the most weight is the passions list, right?
Okay.
And so I will start by kind of pulling out the person's passion list and seeing how that lines up with especially skills and talents. Interests, they can come and go. So while I want to know the direction that you're going, because usually it helps give me an indication of, again, these are the kind of things you're interested in. And so you're expanding in this direction, because a lot of the things in that interest column do align. But so we take the passions and figure out how that coordinates with the stuff that we're already good at. Because a lot of people get stuck doing things in that like skills list that they don't love. And a lot of us multifaceted people can do a lot of stuff. And I know that I've done stuff in the past just to prove that I can, it's close enough to something that I've already been doing that I'm like, oh yeah, I can help you with that. And I just figure it out as I go along. But I don't enjoy it. Like I think of editing videos and things like that. Like I hate it, but I can. And so we want to shed those I hate it, but I can things from the business as we're figuring out what our direction is as multifaceted entrepreneurs.
So what does that look like? How do we figure that out? And then now I think we should probably, for the sake of the people watching this, we should probably point out that that's a pretty serious question, isn't it?
Yep.
Because you can do and do and do and do, and you can get pretty far down the track before you sort of check in and go, how do I feel about this? Right?
Yeah.
Like
most people don't even ask that question.
Right. Let's say you are good at editing videos, but you don't like it, but you start making money at it right away. Hey, that's kind of, for me, that's one of the things that I've noticed is like, I'm good at a lot of things and I can make money at them, right? And it's been like my career since leaving construction and coming into, I don't even consider myself a coach anymore. I was going to say coaching, but I don't even consider myself a coach anymore. But even in whatever my evolution has been from coach to, if I could be so bold, I'll say burgeoning media personality, right?
Mm-hmm.
I did life coaching. I did mindset coaching. I did speaker coaching. I did storytelling coaching. And while I didn't dislike any of those, none of them really kind of were seriously connected to that fire.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess maybe what I want for people to know is that your take on how do we check in with that? How do we make sure, what the hell does it feel like to be connected to your passion?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would ask you, I mean, you said you bounced around a couple of different things before you got to your media empire situation that you're in now. Do you feel that you've connected to your fire now?
So that's been a lifelong question for me.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why I'm digging deep into this.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, I was talking to Trez Ibrahim, and she was talking about how to relaunch your life during the crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And we found ourselves in this same part of the conversation. So if I'm being perfectly candid with you, I don't know how much you know me and my background, but
Mm-hmm.
I have a sense. I'm not playing the victim card whatsoever here. I'm far from a victim. But I have a sense that there's some residual stuff from my background, from my childhood, that sort of obfuscates, if I could use a fancy word, my ability to know if I'm even connected to my passion. And I say that with the utmost gravity and sincerity.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a lifelong thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm being totally transparent, I enjoy the work I do. It's meaningful. And I'm so glad that I happened upon Michael Gerber's work, the E-Myth stuff, when I did, because he talked about being asked, when did you decide that you were going to build the E-Myth Academy? And he said, I didn't. The work just kept showing up. It was elegant. It was interesting. It was seductive, but it was nothing that I started out saying, I'm going to do this for the world. I'm sort of not trying. I don't want to make it sound like I'm suffering through this. My life is great, but I'm somewhat in an exercise of faith that I'm going to feel this mythical thing called the fire of my passion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And I mean, to be honest, I think a lot of us have been sold a load of BS into thinking that you're going to have this like, moment somewhere along the path and the heavens are going to open up and the angels are going to be like, what have took you so long to get here? Like, it just doesn't work like that.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that is just stitched into the fucking narrative. And I think
because
it's
that
really
helps sell programs.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's not real life.
I think it's really important to bust this bubble.
Yes.
Don't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I look to other like multifaceted entrepreneurs. Like, I mean, Richard Branson, I think, is a really great example of this. Like, if he just stopped, if he just stopped with one thing, like we wouldn't have, Virgin Air, and we wouldn't have like, all these crazy Virgin everything that he does. I think he owns like 300 companies or something.
Yeah.
If he was like, oh, well, this feels close enough to my passion, I'll stop here.
Right.
What would the world have lost? And how boring would his life have been? It's not even about the money for him, I don't think.
No,
I think it's about the journey and the path and the like exploration and the shiny objects, which is why I mentioned earlier that we don't eliminate shiny objects. Those fire people that you found your one thing have told you to eliminate the shiny objects because there's some epic, glorious, singular shiny object out there that you're going to just treasure forever. But that's not how it works. I mean, think about if you buy a new car, you buy a new watch, you buy a new something, and you've been thinking about this forever and ever and ever. And it's been like, you know, the pinnacle. When I have this, life is going to be amazeballs. And you get there and it's like, oh, well, you know, that was fun. But, you know, that watch, that's really cool. And so there's always something new. And it's the adventure of going from A to B.
I just bought a new watch yesterday.
Oh, that's funny. I promise I'm not spying on you.
I like the analogy. I can relate to it.
Yeah. So in answer to your question, to me, I've been learning that for people like me, and it sounds like us, it's not about getting to a final destination. And an analogy that I've used in my group is like treasure hunter versus collector. Treasure hunter just goes, finds one thing and then starts over. I like to try and build collectors. And so what I mean by that is you are fascinated by the shiny objects. You go seek them out. Sometimes you let other people bring the shiny objects to you, but they are added to some coherent collection. Something ties it together. I like Eastern Asian art from 1738 to 1852 or something. And so it's all varied in that collection. That's the North Star that we're going for, stuff that adds to that. But it's not just, I want to buy the Mona Lisa. And so
no, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Yeah. So the collecting, the pursuing the shiny objects, the going and conquering something and then finding the next thing is part of the path. So to me, if you're a nicher, which God bless you, there's a lot of you do great work. And it's not that I'm saying that people that niche are bad in any way. I just can't. So it's about it's not getting stuck in stagnation. It's always about kind of going on the path, and the path is going to wind, and you've got to be okay with that. You know, because some people can walk straight up the mountain, and some of us have to take that windy path that just goes up a little at a time. But we're getting somewhere. We're learning things. We're picking up our shiny objects on the way. And the most important thing about the shiny objects that people tend to forget is they all tend to be valuable. And I'll go back to your experience in this too. So with your media empire, and you talked about how you were in life coaching and business coaching and all of these steps along, even construction, maybe be managing construction, maybe, you know, visioning how things were going to look. All of that is making your business right now better. And you would not be as amazing as you are right now if it hadn't been for all those shiny objects you pursued in the past, all of those things you did just because you could, so you could earn some money to keep food on the table. There's nothing wrong with that. And those are the breadcrumbs that you left for people behind you to follow. And that's so valuable for those people.
So I really like what you said about how everything that you've done up till wherever you are is part of it.
Right. Don't denigrate it.
But let's also talk about how to actually make money, right? Because very few people that go the shiny object route, the treasure hunter route, the non-niche route, you know, get to a poor man's version of Richard Branson, right? I mean, and so there's something, this is probably where you teach. This is where you come in. I know I've had a number of coaching clients who, in hindsight, I believe paid the big bucks just because I'm charismatic, which is heartbreaking. I really don't like seeing people put the money down and then just not do the work. You know, it's something that is, I think any self-respecting coach struggles with that. Any self-respecting teacher of any kind is like, of course I want you to have success, you know?
Yeah.
So tell us about that. How do we, while we're giving ourselves permission to not be sort of specifically deeply niched, how do we then make enough money?
So the niche thing is tricky because I use the word niche in a little bit different way. Like when I'm helping people, like there's always a niche, right? You're always going to kind of niche.
Yeah.
No matter if you say you are or not. Like you have a niche, even though you said you don't necessarily have a niche, because your niche is the people, your niche is the vision. Most people, when they think of niche, think of the tool. I use Photoshop to make logos. That's my niche. Or I make this style of logos. Whereas they don't look at the bigger picture of the people, which ties into that vision that I was talking about.
So in other words,
Mhm.
everything I do is sort of moving in one direction.
Yep. And if it's not, that's why you feel like you're spinning your wheels.
Mm,
So you need to find a North Star is kind of the analogy that I'm playing around with right now.
right.
Uh,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So you can get a lot of places by following a North Star, right?
Hmm.
And sometimes you diverge and you have to re-aim a little bit, but like finding that direction. And so the thing that I talk to my clients about is kind of figuring out your ideal for the world and then figuring out how you contribute to a small part of that. So if the world were a perfect place, it would
Right.
look like XYZ. Or if entrepreneurs, if it was a perfect situation for them. So for
Yeah.
me, I look at people like me that are multifaceted entrepreneurs. So if
Right.
what would make a perfect world for these people?
Yeah.
Well, they wouldn't feel guilty for not being able to niche. They
Right.
wouldn't have all that stuck on them of the people that are like, oh, Jen has another idea. What was wrong with the last 12 ideas she just came up with? Like, they wouldn't have to deal with that. They would feel proud of their accomplishment. They would wake up and use that inspiration to move them forward because people that are multifaceted tend to be able to move 30 times faster than everybody. They just get there and then they're like, all right, now what? And then they move somewhere else. But that speed and agility is so valuable and that can be used by a lot of other people.
Right.
So it's finding that direction that you're lined up with and then
Mhm.
letting yourself have the freedom to express in that direction. To use another analogy, going back to the collector's analogy, the collector has a museum.
Mhm.
So they collect all these experiences and then they share what they've learned along the way with people. And that's where your money comes from, is from your museum. And so you teach a lot. So one of the things that I like to help people with is making courses as they're pursuing an interest.
Right.
So you're creating assets
Yeah.
and you might not be interested in that thing forever. This might be a 6-month interest, this might be a 2-year
Yeah.
interest. Who knows? You don't know when you're starting it. But
Right.
if you're building an asset as you're learning about it, because to teach something, you just have to be one step ahead of the people behind you on the path, right? And you might never be the guru in that, but you might be the first step that somebody takes. And then the next step is going on to that, person that knows 30 times more than you, but you can still share value from what you've learned that is worth paying for to people. So creating that museum of things for people to learn from.
So there's a little bit of needing to grant permission, isn't there?
Yes, and
Okay.
feeling like you're not wrong
Yeah.
because I don't know
Yeah.
about you, but you've probably from all the gurus that are out there, like you have to
Hmm.
pick a niche. If you can't pick a niche, you're never going to get anywhere. If you can't
Right.
pick a niche, then you're broken somehow, and you're not. You're just different, and there's nobody talking to you out there, and that's sad.
So I really like what you said about creating assets along the way. That's literally the sort of the where the rubber meets the road result of all the work I've done. Right. I've got assets for those things.
Yep.
I can go back and teach a deep class on storytelling again anytime I need to.
Hmm.
Um, so there's a couple of other things here that I think maybe you can really speak to, or we can speak to. First of all, first of all, if you don't have a niche,
Hmm.
you are, if you choose not to be that, if you choose to sort of open yourself to your multifacetedness, you need to know that you need a different approach in social media.
Hmm. Yeah,
There's
it
that.
has to be all about you. It's a personal
Yes.
branding is the way to do it.
Oh, you guys hear that? You hear what she just said?
Yes.
Hello.
Yep. Because if you brand your person, if it's personal branding, then
Yeah,
you are not tied to anything.
that's right.
And
That's
you're
right.
you're attracting a certain people because they jive with you. And I mean, you can even look at people like, Sonny Leonarduzzi or Pat Flynn. Like these
Hmm.
people started in one area
Yeah,
and then people started following them and they've expanded into other areas and picked different things
right.
to look at. And sometimes they stay like Sunny stays in her niche pretty hardcore for a while, but she's still had a trail and people have been following her as she's expanded because they resonate with her. And so you have to be
Yeah,
even more open than
yeah,
somebody who's branding that hides behind this wall of a
right.
brand. And that's hard to do, is to just be authentic and open. But I'll tell you guys one thing, like everyone that's listening, this is super important. You think you have to have these epic things that you're sharing and this like wisdom that you're bestowing upon the planet,
Yeah.
and trying to sit in the guru's shoes. And while some people want a guru, like lots of times aren't necessarily the people you want following. Like, I don't want to be telling everyone what to do all the time. Like,
Right.
that's no fun. But I love giving people hints and like guidelines and, oh, you want to do this? I've done that. Let me share what I know so that you can get started better. Not in a guru way, but in like a friend way.
I
But
think more and more, I feel like I'm just sort of coming right out and saying I don't trust most gurus anymore.
yeah. Mm-mm.
Most of them. There's a few things to know here in case you guys don't know already. By and large, the very, very top of the internet marketing game is a very affluent human centipede. it's just, it's just, yeah, everybody is connected.
Yeah.
It's just like it sort of feels.
Yeah.
Right. They're all in the same mastermind or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
the same team, the same group, and they cross promote each other. And there's all these things that are happening behind the scenes that it's absolutely sort of like, I jokingly call it a conspiracy. It's not a conspiracy. It's people who got in at the right time and
yeah, it's
blah,
the
blah,
big
blah.
business of the internet that we think the internet's so democratic, and
right. It's the big business of especially marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot. I mean, in the time that I've been in this space, I have heard, I have seen Sam Ovens, who's considered by many to be at the very top, give a testimonial for another guy who taught him. Right. So any, let's say this, be cautious of any guru who tries to come at you, whether it's overt or covert, as though they created whatever they're teaching you.
Yeah.
That should be so there's that. But I think, the piece about a personal brand, I don't know you before this call. This is what's cool about this. I have been talking about the difference between being a service provider, which limits you. It's not a bad thing, but you are in a ditch, I guess, of sorts, where all you can do is get better and better at selling the thing.
Right. And if you try and venture off that, you've created a situation where people are like, why the heck are you doing this? It doesn't make any sense.
You've confused us. Yeah. You've confused us. Aren't you still the speaker coach?
Yeah. Why are you talking about Facebook marketing?
Yeah. Whereas if you focus on building your personal brand, what happens is it's a small shift, but people want to follow your journey.
Yep.
It's a small shift in the way you think about putting yourself out there and stuff.
Yep.
But it's like a thing of degrees, right? After a certain amount of time, a 1 degree difference turns into this hugely different destination.
Yep. And kind of tying into what I was saying earlier, where I'm like, this is so important, and I never really got to the point. But when it's okay to not know everything if you're a personal brand, if people are following along on your journey. And so what I was kind of getting at before that I never quite got to is the things that I have shared in my business, like along the way that people responded to the most, are my most vulnerable, like most authentic posts. And we use the word authentic and it's cheap now, but like legit authentic, to where I'm like, okay, I tried this, or I screwed up, or I did something that, I don't love looking back on it. Here's what I'm doing moving forward. That acknowledgement that like, I learned something, and here's what I've learned.
Yeah.
People love that because that makes you human, because everybody does that every single day of their life. And as a personal brand, you're allowed to be like, okay, this is what I'm studying today, and I'm so excited about this. And here's the 12 things I learned about, Instagram posts today. And aren't these things useful to you? And then in 6 months, you're like, you know what I said, that like point number 5 on that list of 12 things, I tried that for a while, and it wasn't quite that wasn't it. But here is what I'm learning that's working better. Right. And so it's allowing you to constantly improve. You don't have to get stuck buying your own BS, because I think a lot of the gurus get there, or people that are aspiring to be a guru. Yeah. Okay, this is the way we do things. This is the only way we do things. I don't care what you're doing. like it's not right, it's wrong because it's not my way. Like that's not
Yeah,
true. I can learn something from that person.
yeah. And there's so much of that. There's a certain way that you have to be a greasy pimp to do that stuff,
Yeah.
because we all know, at least you and I do, that you're not creating anything from scratch. We
Mm-hmm.
can probably trace it. Probably Dan Kennedy is the last guy to create anything from scratch,
Yeah.
if he even did.
Yeah. And he
You know,
acknowledges he didn't a lot. I
and
mean,
he
he
acknowledges he
references,
didn't. Right.
yeah.
So you, Mr. Mrs. Johnny Janie come lately, you didn't reinvent any wheels here, but you
Yeah.
have to pretend in order to sell like you have the latest, greatest, newest thing.
Yeah. They just change out the bow.
Yeah. And I think that that's a lot of what people, whether they can articulate it or not, it's what jades us.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
And so if you're gonna be focused on your personal brand, with the end game being that you don't have to be nichey, you can avoid some of that stuff too. You can
Mm-hmm.
avoid some of that sort of scarcity pimp stuff, that the manipulation, the sort of, oh, yeah. We know you got your fingers behind your back and they're crossed, like
sure, you're only selling 10 of these.
Yeah. And I feel like the more I'm in this space, the more I'm really on a mission to figure out how to not have to do any of that crap.
Mm-hmm.
Make millions and do it in a way where I have a high level of control over the results I create for people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, you and I don't know each other. We didn't know we'd find ourselves at this intersection in the conversation.
Yeah.
But I will tell you in the audience, because I'd be a fool not to plug my own sort of thing here. The personal brand piece is I think it's the most important sort of underlying foundational piece. And I am currently building something I call the syndication engine, which is going to amplify your ability to turn yourself into a personal brand by probably a factor of 10, while also making it so you only have to make one piece of content a day. Mm-hmm. This is going to be so good.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm not gonna give everybody a full-on sales pitch here, but oh man, we're just putting the finishing touches on the first phase, which is the full content distribution, and then social media channel optimization done for you. Mm-hmm. It's gonna be so good. But nice. What do we need to know next? I feel like you've done a really tremendous job here of, the other thing was, talk to me a little bit about the kind of things that somebody who hasn't had success with niching down is feeling, because this is a grown-up reflection probably of a thing that's shown up through their whole life, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So talk to me about that.
In my experience, we tend to either be or at least feel like we're the black sheep. And we also have a little bit of that like adventurous kind of soul thing going on. Yeah. And we have a gusto for life and a passion for life. And like I said, we can do stuff 30 times faster than everybody else. We just get bored with it. So another thing you feel is like, I personally, before I discovered this whole multifaceted entrepreneur, I just felt wrong. I got to the point where I was afraid to share what I was doing with people, because you get that groaner, eye roller response of just like, oh yeah, okay, we've heard this before. Right. When are you going to actually make something like this stick? And then you put all this pressure on yourself, like, okay, this is the thing. Like, this is finally going to be the one thing. I'm just going to go all in. But I know that whenever I would try and go all in, I would feel like I was like murdering the rest of my children to focus on one. And that it didn't feel good. And so you feel like you've tried to do everything right. You've tried to follow the way that it's supposed to work, the way that you see all these successful people having done it. Yeah. And it feels wrong and it's sad. And so then you have this conflict between like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I know that I don't want to work for somebody else. I know that my ideas are good. And yet I'm not passionate about this thing that I'm doing. I feel stuck here, and you get trapped in a box. And so I want people to know and feel like they don't have to be in a box. There's no such thing as a box. The box is fake. And if the box
Yeah.
makes you feel better, then have a box, but it's all in your head.
Yeah. And it's probably going to be something that you probably are going to experience some sort of a reflection of the way your family treated you.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is really hamstringing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to know that going in, like, if you choose to be any kind of entrepreneur, I think it's important to understand that you're choosing to call down all of your personal crap and deal with it
in public.
I don't know that in public many times. I don't know that we really understand that as a group, right?
Yeah.
I think, or to the extent that we say, okay, I get it. What I'm building something. Again, back to Michael Gerber. I'm paraphrasing him here. He said the difference between a spiritual person, a spiritualist, and an entrepreneur is the spiritualist will do all this development in their own head and in their own mind, sitting on the mountaintop, whereas an entrepreneur wants to build something concrete in the world, bigger than them, that money moves through.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, they're doing the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've played with different, like, I've spirituality things in the past where I have a lot of like woo people that are attracted to me, even though I feel like I'm a fairly logical individual and I have a hard time actually plugging into something spiritually, but it's fascinating. And there are a ton of parallels between the two.
So I want to say, again, this is for them, not you. You called this down, but that's not a bad thing, right? A life spent finding where your sort of personal challenges are and overcoming them is not a bad life. But do it in a way where you build something, like you build assets, you give yourself permission, you understand that this is the job and the process and the experience you chose into. I said chose into, speaking of woo woo. Do you find that there's an element of needing to give permission and guide through that piece in your work? Yeah.
Yeah. And also just the permission that it's okay to always be a wanderer. It's okay to always be an adventurer and to not be rooted. I think just culturally, like it's important to have roots. You know, you buy the house with the white picket fence, or you settle down,
right?
And some of us just we're not settlers. Like maybe we bring a person or two along with us on our journeys, but we're not. Settling isn't in our vocabulary, and so knowing that walking a path is just as valuable as being rooted. It's just two options of how you can approach life.
Yeah. Is there anything that we didn't get to that comes up in your work with people a lot that you think is like, we've really got to share here today?
Well, I'll share another part of my process with people, because if you're kind of trying to do this yourself, it can be a little overwhelming. So an analogy that I like to use is I'm helping people once they've made their list of the skills and talents and interests and passions, is as multifaceted entrepreneurs, we're kind of like a restaurant that has a menu. And the menu might be a wide variety of things that you can do. So those skills and talents lists. But then what you're looking for to move your business forward and start making money is your specials of the day and your signature dishes.
Yeah, I like
that. Yeah. So while you can do a bunch of things, and maybe you'll pull them out of your back pocket for a while. Maybe I'm helping somebody to co-create a course and they really need somebody to edit their videos, and I can, and I don't love it, but as part of this, I'll throw this in to sweeten the deal. So it's not always about doing things you love every single second of the day. It's about loving the path that you're on and loving the direction that you're moving, and trying to add more and more passion and love to your day, like love of things you're doing. But sometimes there's going to be things you have to do that you don't love, but that put food on the table. So you have those menu of things that you can do. When a restaurant picks their specials of the day or week or whatever, sometimes it's just the chef really felt like cooking spaghetti and meatballs that day. And sometimes it's like, we got a really good deal on ground meat, and so our profit margin is going to be way better if we do spaghettis and meatball than if we do lasagna or something. so you're going to have that combination of the things that you're like passionate about doing right now on your specials of the day, and the things that have a higher profit margin that you might not love to do, but that totally fit in your restaurant, because your restaurant is still niched in a way. You know, you go to an Asian place and they might have chicken nuggets on the menu for the kids, but in general, the stuff on the menu floats around a similar theme.
Yeah.
So those are your specials of the day, and that's what you talk about a lot in your promotions, wherever it is that you do your promotions, and the stuff that you're building content around, and also your signature dishes. And your signature dishes are the things that you're super passionate about, that you're really, really good at. And it's okay for your signature dish to change. I don't know if you've ever watched like Hell's Kitchen or a dish like that, but like he'll make a signature dish and you'll notice that he's like, this is my signature dish. And it's never the same from one season to a next. So that's allowed to change, but generally your signature dish changes slower. And so usually you outgrow your signature dish rather than it's just, you know, not the highest profit margin or whatever. And so your signature dishes, you're going to build a lot of pillar content around that, stuff that people can reference for years to come. That stuff you dig in deep on when you share and talk about. If you're ever sitting in front of a blank screen, you're like, what do I talk about today? It's going to have something to do with hopefully your signature dish, or at least your specials of the day. Don't even bother talking about your full menu. A waiter wouldn't do it. You shouldn't do it.
Right.
So kind of dividing your things up into that way kind of sometimes helps make it easier. Like, okay, I can do all of these things. Which are the things I love doing? Which are the things that get me the highest profit margin? What kind of restaurant are we? Who are we helping? And why are we helping them? And then you're off.
Love it. Nice. Let's call it right there. That was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
I think if you guys, when you watch this, if you have felt a validation from this and a vindication and sort of an affirmation, then go say thank you to Jen. I think one of the things that we don't do as much as I wish we would in social media is actually take the time to push out a little gratitude, to push out a little connection when something cuts through the noise for us. And I know that there are some of you guys out there in my world who this is or should be cutting through the noise for you and giving you a certain level of permission and validation. So go say hi. Go say thank you. Jen, thank you so much. I love it. This was great. I didn't know what to expect, and you really, I love this, that I've said this on every interview so far. I don't know any of these people almost coming ahead of time, and all of you guys have been great.
Well, so thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. And guys, go out there. Don't be ashamed of who you are. Like, embrace it and just rock who you are.
And work that personal brand, kids.
Yep.
All right. Bye-bye.